What are the solutions for the equation 3x squared minus 5x plus 2 equals 0? Well, the coefficient of x squared is something other than 1. So we're going to have to solve this with factoring by grouping. I'm going to split that negative 5x into two terms. The coefficients of those two terms will multiply to get what 3 times 2 is. So they multiply to get 6, and they add to get that middle coefficient of negative 5. So two numbers that multiply to get 6 and add to get negative 5 would be negative 3 and negative 2. So we're going to split that negative 5x into negative 3x and negative 2x. Now it's called factoring by grouping because of this next step. We're going to group those first two terms together, the 3x squared and negative 3x, and factor out a common factor. A common factor of those first two terms would be 3x. So divide each of those first two terms by 3x, and that's what goes inside the parentheses. Then you have to group the last two terms together, the negative 2x and 2, and factor out a common factor there. Now you don't just want to factor a 2 out, you want to factor a negative 2 out so that you get the same thing in the parentheses. You have to get the same thing in the parentheses for this to work. Because that is the next step, is to take out what's in the parentheses. So we're going to factor an x minus 1 out of each of those two terms. So if you take an x minus 1 out of each of those, just like erasing it with your eraser, you're going to be left with that 3x minus 2. And that creates the two binomials that factors into. So 3x minus 2 times x minus 1 equals 0. Those two multiply together to equal 0, so set each one equal to 0. Set 3x minus 2 equal to 0, also x minus 1 equal to 0. Then you have two simple equations that you can solve for x. In that first one, add 2 to both sides, you get 3x equals 2. In the second equation, add 1 to both sides, get x equals 1. In that first equation, divide each side by 3. You have x equals 2/3. And the second equation is already done, that's x equals 1. So x equals 2/3 or x equals 1, and that is letter G.